Hey guys, you know what time of the month it is? It's time to do a distro review.
But you can't do this to me.
Alpine Linux is a distribution which prides itself on being incredibly minimalistic. There's no graphical installer. They don't even include the GNU core utils. And they also offer a BSD equivalent to sudo Doas. And it's also incredibly stripped down. Alpine is generally used for the development of containers, but no one said you couldn't use it as a desktop OS because I want to, gosh darn it. I want to perpetuate the meme and clown on all those free software zealots. I actually got this idea from wanting to investigate systemd free distributions, and the ones that always come up are like Void Linux or Gentoo. And when I began looking at a lot of systemd free distributions, the fact of the matter is it is far easier to use systemd. Now you can fight me on that one, but given the fact that it's the default in so many Linux distributions, I can guarantee you that it's true. Systemd does way too many things, and probably more things than the average user actually needs on a daily basis out of a desktop system. I'm not to say systemd is inherently bad. Look, if you're like me and you're stuck using something like systemd because you have programs that rely on it, then go use systemd. It's kind of like a little cherry on top. It's a nice little thing to improve the security of your distribution, but it doesn't do you a whole lot. And there are still people who to this day which believe in the systemd hatred controversy, because as we all know, controversy travels quickly on the internet. So systemd boots up slower than run it or whatever. It's like, guys, no one cares about statistics. People are more likely by market research to make decisions based on emotion, not by what is actually true. I am not using Gentoo. I am not waiting 16 hours for a minor update to compile. I am going to use a binary distribution only. Second, distributions like Devuan, Artix, and Void Linux, it is very difficult to for me to pinpoint actually how many people use them, because I've heard of them before, and whether they get the same love and attention that other operating systems might have, I don't know if they actually do. Because one of the things I pay very close attention to is do you actually have a security team for your distribution? Do you keep your packages updated? And now when we say keep packages updated, already Devuan's out because, they based off of Debian. They don't keep their packages updated. So no Devuan. But then we also have Void and Artix, but it's how many people are actually using it? And I don't know. And I'm sure maybe this is coming from my ignorance and I might have to look at them later, but if I can't find an easy way to assuage these fears, maybe I shouldn't be using your distribution. How about that? Maybe you should make it more visible on your website or on your GitHub or whatever for me to find it. I believe Alpine Linux is the only distribution which fits in this regard. It's minimal, it's a binary distribution with biannual releases, it's widely used in the server market, so if something goes wrong in it, you can guarantee that admins and IT professionals are going to scream at the top of their lungs if they notice something goes wrong with their Docker containers. And there's also a surprising number of packages in its repositories to get the basic work in your operating system done. You can still browse the web and watch videos or edit documents and practically do anything you could do on desktop Linux, except for, at least in my understanding, gaming. Because, I mean, at least optimally, because the big one is I can't figure out how to get GPU acceleration. So at least GPU acceleration through AMD and NVIDIA, because NVIDIA only works through glibc, and because Alpine is minimal, Alpine only uses Musel, not glibc. So yeah, good luck running your NVIDIA drivers on Alpine. Now the other problem I've had is you can't run Alpine Linux as a desktop OS in a virtual machine, because I can't get any guest agent to work. I couldn't get the Spice guest agent to work. Apparently people have been fighting over this for years, and I don't know quite what it is. And if it doesn't work on KVM, good luck getting it to work on VirtualBox, because I didn't see a thing to install the VirtualBox guest editions anywhere. If someone knows how to actually get Spice VD agent to actually work on Alpine without having to build it from source, or even if you provide me a script to do so, please let me know in the comments down below. When you go to Alpine's website, they're going to give you a lot of CDs, and most people are going to be setting yourself on a virtual machine. You might be trying to do this on bare hardware. I actually installed Alpine on a 32-bit computer because Alpine actually still supports 32-bit software. But I strongly recommend picking the standard ISO. Now, some of the ultra minimalists out there might be tempted to pick the base install or a minimalized install, but it's so stripped down you might not be able to use specific features that are included out of the box on the standard ISO. So I just, for simplicity's sake, just pick the standard ISO. It saves yourself a lot of hurt later if you don't know what you're doing. Now, I'm going to be showing you guys how to download Alpine. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that you know how to install it. You went to the website, you downloaded the standard installer, you verified the GPG key and all that stuff, and the SHA-256 sum. Great. Great. Good for you. We're just going to go and open a virtual machine and we're going to install it. Now, this is going to be a little different. So don't expect this to be like as hard as like, you know, your Arch or Gentoo install, but it's not going to be as easy as your Ubuntu install. So just be aware of that going in. You're going to add an ISO. I'm going to pick an ISO. I'm going to pick Alpine because this is what it is. Hey, look at that. If you use an up-to-date version of Virt Manager, they just give you Alpine. I'm going to click OK. And then you can choose to give it any amount of memory. I'm just going to give, I'll just say I'll give it 8 gigs of memory and 2 cores of my CPU. I think that's pretty sufficient. And then you choose to give it a size. Just for simplicity's sake, you can give it 16. I probably don't even need this much because of how stripped down it is. But I'll sort of just, you know, make your better judgment of what you're going to use your machine for. If you're using real hardware, probably doesn't even matter. You're going to be using your whole disk. And I'm just going to click OK. And what you're going to do is you're going to be presented with a screen like this, and then Alpine will just immediately proceed to boot. Now, this is going to be like a full-on, like, command line only. So, yes, be prepared. All right. I don't know where the documentation is. Just, I'm pretty sure I just guessed to get this information. So, your mileage may vary, but they haven't changed this stuff in a long time. So, first thing you want to do is type in your username as root, and then you just get in. It's as easy as that, folks. And it even gives you a cute little warning. Welcome to Alpine 3.17, or insert your version number here. The host login is root. You can set up your system with the command setup-alpine. And guys, before Arch Linux had their own command line installer, Alpine beat them to it. And I'll be real with you, Alpine's installer systems are really, really good. We're going to run a setup-alpine. Going to be asked some questions. Now, if you don't know what these letters mean, you're going to have to go figure out your keyboard layout. I know I have some people from Brazil and Indonesia and various places around the world. So pick your keyboard. Pick the keyboard that works for you. My keyboard is US. That's what I do. Available variants. You can choose different variants of your keyboard. Mine is US. Okay. Enter a system host name. I think I'll just do the default. If you're a desktop user, frankly doesn't matter. If you were a server admin, okay, you might need to care a little bit. Alright, available interfaces, Ethernet. This is also where you would actually connect your Wi-Fi cards, and I actually have tested this on a few proprietary Wi-Fi cards, a Realtek and an Intel one, and it detected both of them correctly in both instances. So in this instance, you would also connect to your Wi-Fi network through the command line, but in this instance, I'm connected through Ethernet over the virtual machine, so you can do whatever works for you. So I'm going to hit enter because it's used as ETH0. That's what we want. Enter. IP address. DHCP, we're not doing server stuff. Manual network configuration. Nah, I think we're good. And then we're just going to let DHCP run. And now it's going to ask us for a root password. Now, this is your administrative password. But what if I told you you don't need to make it good to use Alpine on the desktop? Now, hear me out. We're going to be changing this password later, and in fact, we're going to be locking away the root user so we can't use it at all. That way, we can only have a user with Doas privileges. That is what we want. It's very similar to how when you install other desktop Linux distributions, you typically just have one user that also runs just with sudo privileges. And we just want that because we don't want to be running everything as root. We just want to be running with Doas or sudo privileges. You can install Doas or sudo in Alpine, but I'm going to be also doing Doas. But For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to give this a pathetic password. Next, it's going to ask you what time zone you're in, and it's going to ask you UTC by default. So UTC is Greenwich Mean Time, so that's in Greenwich, Britain. But if you want to do check a different time zone, and you do need to make this accurate, because when you connect to the internet, you need to be accurate with your time zone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say US, and then it says, great, what time zone of the US are you in? And it's, again, question mark, and then you can get to time zones. You'll see here it says Alaska, Arizona, Central, and I'm going to say Eastern, because I am in the Eastern time zone of the US. And now it's going to ask for a proxy. I am not using a proxy. I'm pretty sure most of you guys aren't using proxies. And then it's going to ask you for a bunch of mirrors. It's going to ask you for more, but let's ignore those for now. Now you can do R to pick a random one, which I suppose you could do. You can also press F, not to pay respects, but to get a faster mirror. So maybe pay respects to your internet. I don't know. But I'm just going to click 1, which is the default, and if I just go up to the top here, that would just be Alpine's own CDN mirror. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to ask me for a user. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give this a username, and I'm going to give my username. I always do user. Do not make this your real name, and I'm surprised this doesn't get enough mention online. Do not make your username your real name. You do not ever want someone who is shoulder surfing you or whatever to like know like your real name just by doing this. So just make your username user. That is all you need to do. In fact, you can just name your computer something generic, like maybe just call it like office or laptop or, you know, whatever. Do whatever works for you as long as it's something generic. I'm just going to type in a username, and they expect that you just type in your username just to do this. So I'm just going to click type in user as my username. What's your full name for user? And by default, they say the full name for user is user, but you can do whatever you want here. Change the password for user. Now, this is the password you do need to make very good. Do not do what I am doing and make your password a pathetic 8-character password, which is totally not password. Now, the other thing you're going to ask for is an SSH key, and this is, again, more for people who are using containers or servers, but I am none of those people, so nah, I'm good. And then it's also going to ask for an open SSH server, so you can do open SSH, drop bear, or none, and I'm just going to say open SSH, why not? Probably not even going to use it. Then it's going to ask you what disk you want to use. Mine is VDA, yours is probably going to be something like SDA, you know, or if you're using like some sort of special hardware, you've got NVMe or eMMC drives, you'll see a different letter here. Do the letter that you see here, and make sure you do the correct one, because if you choose the wrong one, you're going to delete everything. VDA. And it's going to say the following disk has been selected. VDA. How would you like to use it? Now let's actually decrypt some of this here. So there's multiple settings here. There's the sys, data, crypt, and LVM. And you're probably wondering, what do all of these things actually mean? So if you hit question mark, it'll actually tell you what each of these do. So sys does not stand for sys Linux. It's actually your traditional disk install. It creates a, you know, the generic Linux system everyone expects. Boot, file system, and a swap file. Then there's also data, which uses the disk purely for data storage. So again, this is for people who run servers, which makes it so that your server's memory, everything is stored in memory rather than on cache. Usually it's only for people who are running like database servers and stuff. If we're not installing it on a server, so let's not worry about that. But the most important ones that I want to highlight here are crypt and crypt setup. Now, the reason I bring these two up is because this is how you get full disk encryption on your Alpine install. If you are a desktop user and you're planning on using this on real hardware, as Alpine is your desktop operating system, you need to use crypt sys. Full disk encryption. You must use full disk encryption. If you don't, someone can just jack in with a USB drive of Linux or BSD and rip out all of your files, because nothing is private if you don't use full disk encryption. So if you're on real hardware, here is where you would type in crypt sys. That will install a base system with Lux encryption fully set up for you, and then they'll also prompt you for a password. For simplicity's sake, for the tutorial, I am also going to be doing this, but if you're doing this on a virtual machine, you do not need to do this. because of a virtual machine, you should fall back on the full disk encryption of your OS. Cryptsys. And then it will give you a little loading bar. And then it says, warning, we're going to erase the above disks. Yes. Again, make sure you know your passwords and stuff. Make sure there's no important files in there. And it's going to ask you for our passphrase. And I'm going to enter an 8-character password, which is totally not password after all. And it's going to verify said password, and it's going to generate keys. Now that you've entered in your password, you must enter it in again, so that when the installer is running, it can open it and get in and do all the stuff that it needs to do. So you can see right now it's installing the boot partition, seeing /mount/boot is device /dev/vda1. That's what we want. And then you can see it's just running its thing. Installation is now complete. That is how fast it is to install Alpine, kids, at least on a basic level. So let's reboot. Just type in reboot, or you can just turn off your computer and turn it back on again. If you press the power button, it will just literally turn it off. So this is the Alpine thing. Now it's going to ask you for your full disk encryption passphrase. So type in your super strong and secure full disk encryption passphrase. And here we are. You're now booted into Alpine. We'll be there shortly, and take a look at that. We're back at the login screen. So keep in mind, we still have the root user with that ultra pathetic password, and we also have the standard user with our good password. Now, what are we going to do here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into root with the pathetic password. Now I'm going to explain why. We're going to use the root user, and we're going to use the root user to first run a general update of the system to make sure everything's up to date. What we're also going to do is we're going to add Doas or sudo privileges to our standard user. So that way our standard user can do things like run updates and install things. So let's give a basic rundown of how Alpine's package manager works, so we can even get started on all of this, okay? And you'll start to see how fast Alpine is. First, we do APK update. APK update is basically like running your sudo apt update. It just checks for updates, and it says I've got 4,990 packages available. Next, if you do APK upgrade, what this will do is this will install any updates, and it looks like there are 67 updates just now. And then if you also do APK add, this lets you install something. So for example here, because we're going to be installing root privileges, we're going to be doing APK add Doas. And Doas is a more simplistic version of sudo, especially when most people don't actually utilize features in sudo. So there are niche features in sudo, things like sudo groups or like sudo edit. And the reality is most people don't actually use those and probably don't even need those because Doas is a lot more minimal and has a lot less lines of code. So if I do APK add Doas, and wow, look at that. That is how fast the install was for Alpine Linux's Doas package. Amazing, right? If you did like APK del Doas, oh, now it's gone. It's that fast, guys. It's that fast. APK add Doas. It's back. You barely even knew it was there. So next what we need to do is we need to add our standard user to the Doas permission. We do add user, because remember I already have the user already exists. And in this scenario, instead of typing in user, you want to type in your username. Then we also have wheel. And wheel is the group that you need to add the user to so they can access things like sudo and Doas. So I'm going to hit enter. And what this did is just added the standard user to the wheel group. And keep in mind, too, we also have Doas. Doas is here, too. So let's actually log out of the root user. And you can log out by hitting exit. Now let's log into our standard user. So I'm going to log into my standard user. And you can see it looks pretty much the same. You can see that it's, it's TTY prompt, about what you'd expect. But here's the cool part, right? If you run Doas APK update, and it's going to ask me for my password, you can now fetch updates using Doas as a standard user. Really cool, right? But we're not done yet. We need to actually get rid of the root user. This root user is here and is just eating up space and could potentially be compromised somehow. What we're going to do is we're going to lock the root user, and this is actually something that's built into any Unix-like system. So if you do doas passwd -l root, and it's going to permanently lock the root user. But now there it is. You have your basic system, but it's like, but this is just a black screen. I can't do anything with this. This is really awkward. All right, so why don't we go and add some stuff? So now one of the first things that I always do is, this will be a little annoying to some, is the only text editor you get in Alpine out of the box is VI. VI is, you know, it is what it is. I'm personally not a fan. We'll just do a quick apk add vim. Oh, I mean, doas apk add vim. This is literally like the pseudo comic all over again. Vim. We're gonna do /etc/apk repositories. And you're going to be presented with this menu here. Now, one of the things you'll see here is you'll see a bunch of CDN mirrors and stuff, and your URLs might be a little different depending on where in the world you are, but you want to uncomment out this line right here, which is the community repository. This community repository is actually where a lot of the packages that are used for people who run Alpine on their desktops. So we're going to do WQ. You can do this in Nano too, just remove the pound sign at the front. You can, I mean, the hashtag for all the young kids. That's how you basically do it. So we're going to run apk update because, again, we made changes to the package repository. So let's run an update. APK update. Whoops. I mean, doas APK update. Sorry. Excuse me, princess. All right. Look, we did it. There's now 17,000 possible packages to install. Clearly not as big as something like Debian or Fedora, but it's still pretty good. Still got a decent number of packages in here. But here's what's also really cool. Alpine actually has a deceptive number of desktop environments available. So if I wanted to search a desktop environment, so if I do apk search GNOME, oh, look at that. Look at all of these GNOME applications. What if I did apk search Plasma? Oh my gosh, look at all these Plasma stuff. Oh, here's a good one. APK search Sway. Oh my gosh, you can run all of the desktop environments that matter. Isn't that cool? For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to pick GNOME. You can do whatever you want. I'm just going to pick GNOME for the sake of example, because here's one cool tool that's actually in Alpine, which isn't in Arch Linux, and yet somehow is more easy to use than Arch Linux is, despite the fact that this thing has no documentation at all. All right, so you got to run this command as root. So first thing you need to do is you need to do as, and you do setup-desktop. Enter. Which desktop environment do I want? They even give me a choice. Look, we get GNOME, Plasma, XFCE, or none. Why don't we do GNOME? Just for simplicity's sake, we'll just do GNOME. And what this is actually doing is this is a series of scripts that's maintained by Alpine's maintainers. So it runs a install command to install all, pretty much your basic GNOME desktop environment. Look, it's even installing Firefox and some various things for OpenRC and Musel locales for, like, GNOME. Pretty cool. Oh. Ow! Hey! Oh! We're done! Wow, that took way too long. Alright. Stupid internet. Alright, we're back. Alright, we're gonna do, we already installed GNOME. All you have to do now is reboot. Now, hold your horses. You can't reboot without using root privileges. Or you can press the power button and press the power button again. Do as reboot. We're gonna reboot. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's GDM running on Alpine Linux. Enter in our super secure password. Oh my gosh, look at this. It's the same GNOME that everyone knows. GNOME 43, except on Alpine Linux. But, it's not quite your vanilla GNOME experience. I mean, they still give you, like, GNOME Web. I mean, who in the world uses... If you have to be a sadist if you're going to be using GNOME Web. But, they still give you Firefox, so I don't even know what the big deal is. I don't even know why they bothered, to be honest. Especially given the audience of who uses Alpine, I don't even know why they bothered. But let's do some quick housekeeping, because obviously this stuff is bloat in my mind. Let's get rid of it. APK delete or del Firefox, and we'll also get rid of GNOME Web. We don't need these things. Get them out of here. No such package. Is it just web? Is it just Epiphany? I'm so stupid. Yeah, haha, they're all gone now. We don't need Epiphany or Firefox. If you go to Flathub, yes, you go to flathub.org, you go to, what's this? The Alpine logo. They say sudo, but come on, guys. Let's do a Doas apk add Flatpak. Enter in your password. Oh my gosh, you now have Flatpak installed. I actually installed it off camera. And then you go and add the Flathub repo. Oh my gosh, look at this, guys. You can now do Flatpak things. Flatpak run org.mozilla.firefox. Boom, here it is. I'm actually using the Flatpak thing right here. But here's the other thing too, right? If you go to YouTube, say you go to my YouTube channel, for example. Say you click on a video, Flatpaks. You can get you won't get audio out of the box. Okay, you will, but let me explain what you need to do first. It's really convoluted because this is how the grouped packages work in Alpine. So here's what you're gonna need to do. First, what you need to do is you need to get rid of Pulse Audio. Yes, because Pulse Audio is included in the default install. So I'm gonna do Doas apk del Pulse Audio. But in order to do so, you also need to get rid of GNOME Core apps. And then when you do this, it's also going to remove all of the core GNOME applications. So, but it's okay. You can, if you've gotten this far, and you know what they're called, I'm pretty sure you can just go into Flathub and reinstall them. You know, you can install back all those things. So if you wanted to do like Flatpak install EOG, like I have GNOME, #1, but yes, and then look at that. You can now get your image viewer back, which was uninstalled from the GNOME Core apps. But hey, once you do all of these things, you've installed the cancer that is Pulse Audio. You now still get to play something like sound, and you're gonna go to do Doas apk add Pipewire. You want to do Pipewire and Wire Plumber. You can get your audio working by using something like Pipewire, the audio server of the future, because you gotta be using Pipewire. If you aren't using Pipewire, you're wrong. All right, but here's another problem, and I'm pretty sure this is an overlooked problem when everyone sets up these things, is there's no mandatory access controls. It's like, huh? What? Mandatory access controls are the things which prevent your programs that are already on your computer from doing things you might not want them to be doing. So on Ubuntu, you can use something like AppArmor, and AppArmor is on a lot of other distros like SUSE and Debian, and on Arch Linux too. But on Fedora, they have SE Linux. Now, SE Linux doesn't exist on Alpine, but AppArmor does. So why don't we go and add AppArmor? So I'm going to do apk add. And we're gonna do AppArmor. Type AppArmor utils. If anyone has downloaded AppArmor or set up AppArmor on Ubuntu before, or Debian, you're probably really familiar with these commands. And then AppArmor profiles, and you can see it installs incredibly fast because that's AppArmor for you. But next, the setup process for this is really similar to people who have set up AppArmor on Arch Linux. First, we need to examine the default partition of our system so we know the Linux security modules that are being loaded up with it. Because if you modify any of these, there's a chance that it will cause problems. So if I do syskernel security LSM, and you're going to get a thing like this. Now, be aware that my thing here has a tilde. You're gonna want to ignore that, because the tilde here is the home folder, which is the folder that I'm currently in. So we're not gonna want that. But we do want here where it says compatibility, landlock, and Yammer. That is actually what we're going to be using here to install AppArmor's thing into our boot configuration file. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to modify the boot configuration file within OpenRC so that when the system boots up, it can automatically load the AppArmor module. So if I do /boot extlinux.conf, and then we're going to do at the end of this append line here, what you're going to want to add is you're going to want in this line lsm equals, and keep in mind we have to look at what we have here. So if yours says something different, you're going to want to put those in too. So I'm going to do capability, comma, landlock, comma, gamma, comma, AppArmor. Because remember, this one right here, this is only what is currently running. By adding it here, this is actually making it permanent. So we're going to escape, WQ to write, and we're going to save that file. So now, if you do Doas RC service AppArmor start, it says AppArmor has already been started because if you start out, I tried starting it off camera and it works just fine. So if you do Doas RC update add AppArmor boot. Now, if you have any problems with these commands, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to reboot your system, because usually what that does is that tells OpenRC, hey, it gets the juices flowing, you know, it gets everything working. So if we do AA status, you can see here it's not mounted properly. So let's do as reboot. Take a look at this. Do as AA status. Enter in the crummy password. Oh my gosh, look at this, guys. Look at all this. Look at all of them profiles. AppArmor is now ready to use. Now, I'm not going to go through it in detail here, but I believe setting up AppArmor is absolutely critical. Setting up AppArmor is critical on like any system that isn't a Red Hat based system. Like, you need to be using AppArmor. You have Arch or Debian, Ubuntu, you need to be using AppArmor. It's essential to like basic security. For such little inconvenience, you will practically never notice that you are even using AppArmor at all. That's how like smooth you can do, especially when there's actually default profiles. And let's get into profiles. We do as AA enforce, and we're gonna do etc AppArmor.d, and then we're gonna do the star. So we're gonna select every profile in this, and we're going to set every single profile into enforce mode. And this is going to set all of these various profiles into enforce mode if they were already installed. So for example, you'll see here we got stuff for Dovecot, Apache, Samba. Especially if you guys are doing something like remote file sharing your local network, you're going to want this set up, because I'm not going to get into detail here because there's actually more AppArmor profiles out there than just this. I just want to use this as sort of a launching point to get yourself thinking. So here's some of the cool stuff we did. So let's recap. Here's some of the cool stuff we did, okay? We have Flatpak installed. We have Flatpak installed, so we can install all sorts of applications on Alpine and where it will always work the same. I mean, it might work a little different because you don't have systemd, but Flatpak still does not rely on systemd. So you can just install applications without having to rely on systemd. And you can also install all the goofy programs you want. So if you want to install stuff through APK, you can do that too, because you know how to use APK as a package manager. You set up AppArmor, so you already have all of the default permissions set, at least on a basic level for servers. And this is pretty much a great launching point for you to basically use Alpine. So yes, you can go and watch me. You can go watch me with all the sounds. And all the sound works. You can click on a video and the sound plays just like you'd expect. Why am I getting Spectrum ads? This is how you get Alpine working with sound, a web browser, some applications, Pipewire, AppArmor, Flatpak. You've got it all. And that's all you need. That's all it takes. Why don't you go like this video? Like this video if you installed Alpine Linux on real hardware and now you're crying because you don't have GPU support. And as a special announcement, I am hosting a live stream April 1st, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. If you would like to come and bug me with a question or all of your burning questions, or you would like to give me all of the video subjects and all of the questions you have, please let me know. You can also send me an email. So if you want to send me a question ahead of time, and I will have this prepared, send me an email at my email address. It's this thing right here, right below my head. Go send me an email and I'll try to answer your question to the best of my ability. Thank you for watching. I'm glad you're all here. I hope you liked Alpine. Have a great rest of your week.